Right, good morning everybody. Welcome to our Friday morning coffee chat. My name's Rod from the Learn to Paint Academy, if you don't know me, and this is our regular Friday morning coffee chat where we give you a chance to ask whatever questions you've got about painting, learning to paint, the business of being an artist, or life in general. Can't say I can answer all your questions, but we'll give it our best shot. Hope you are all well. And fingers crossed that our live stream will come through better than it has been. Don't know. It's a mystery to me. But fingers crossed. Good morning, Peter in New Zealand. Good morning, Manju. Morning, Sajada. Morning, Gail. G'day, Alan. Good morning, Sherry. Good morning, Jeanette. Who else is here? Good morning, Gail. Good morning, Jenny. Welcome. Hope you're all well. Morning, Beverly in Ontario. Welcome. So this is your chance to ask whatever questions you've got about learning to paint, the process of painting, the Learn to Paint Academy, or the business side of art. I'm happy to talk about the business side of art and so on. We could talk about whatever you want. Morning, Teresa. Morning, Pauline. Morning, Barbara. Morning, Chrissy. Morning, Jeanette in Perth. Welcome. Hope you're all doing well. G'day, Jenny. G'day, Margaret. Hey, Janet. G'day, Robert in Ireland. Welcome. Appreciate you staying up. And g'day, Colin. G'day, Linda. So just to, as a bit of preamble as we wait for people to join and so on, many of you will know that we've been, I'll get rid of that. I did recently the Brian Cook, 4 painting projects for Brian Cook. Brian was a big influence on my painting, and I recorded the last 4 painting projects of Brian. We were going to get him to come up here and film. Not getting any voice. Is anybody else not getting voice, or is the audio coming through for everyone else? I think it might just be at your end there. Sajada? Got it. Okay, cool. Where are we up to here? G'day, Rosalie. G'day, Becky. G'day, Gail. G'day, Mary. And hey, Linda. I think I've already said hi to Linda. Thank you, Al. Appreciate that. Audio's clear everywhere else. Good. So you probably will be aware, most of you, that I filmed the last 4 projects of Brian Cook. The plan was to get him to come up here, but we never got round to it before he passed away. And I know a lot of you have already had a go at these. So these are little 16 by 20 demos that I did. And they're now in the Learn to Paint Academy as a course, trying to share as much about Brian's approach to painting as I could. I think I did about 4 workshops with him. So in that time I picked up as much information as I could, and tried to put that into these painting demonstrations. These are just 2 of them all, obviously. And of course, it's also through my filter, through my approach to painting as well. So it's a bit of a combination of the 2. But I particularly like these 2 projects. Okay, so what I have been working on, so just to give you a bit of a feel for what I've been working on, maybe if I stand up, is I thought, how do I blow those up to a bigger version, right? So there's what would be involved in blowing them up. So I've been working on larger versions. Maybe I'll bring that closer. There you go. This is a 24 by 36 inch painting. And I think that translates reasonably well as a larger painting. Just a little bit more detail, I've put in a little bit more foreground work, a bit more work into the trees. I've sort of cooled off the sky a bit to try and make the field have more of a feeling of sunlight. And it's a good sort of challenge to blow them up into larger paintings. So I think these are 24 by 36 inches. these larger ones. So I've been working on that one. Just about finished that one, and I'll show you the other one. This is the beach seam one. Haven't quite finished this one yet. And what I did with these, I'm going to try and figure out the right way to hold it. What I did with these is I started them. Come on, Rob, what are you doing? There we go. I started them with acrylics, and I roughed them in with acrylics. I'm sorry, I just don't, oh, there we go. And then layered water mixed oils over the top. Haven't quite finished this one yet. I think I need a little bit more work in the sand and rocks and so on. But it's quite an interesting challenge to blow them up to larger paintings. So if you're looking for a challenge, then give this one a go. Try not to get paint on yourself though, because time and a place, isn't there? Let me get that off. Yeah, so look, they're good little 16 by 20 demos to do, have a go at. But blowing them up into a larger version requires a bit more thought and a lot more paint, bigger brushes. And as you blow things up, of course, it's going to require a little bit more detail in each of the elements. So I don't know, if you're looking for a challenging painting approach this weekend, then maybe take one of those. If you've done one of the Brian Cook ones already, take one of them and try and blow it up into a larger version. It's a really good challenge. Now these are on stretch canvases. They're 24 inch by 36 inches. So you'll find the original demos in the Learn to Paint Academy if you're a full member. If you're not and you just want to buy those for painting projects, you can go to learntopaint.academy/Brian, B-R-I-A-N, and you can get access to those for painting projects from there. G'day Steve, how are you? Hey Pauline. So I just thought I'd show you what I've been doing. I'm going to start working on the Painting the Impressionists project soon. And I've been thinking about how to structure it because in about a week and a half I start radiation treatment, which will go for about 6 weeks. And I don't know what time of day that's going to happen. Unfortunately, I can't, with COVID and everything and scheduling, they can't give me an exact time. So what that means is I can't really figure out what my available time is for live streaming. Any recommendations for an easel for larger canvas? Well, 30 by 40 inches. You probably need an easel like the one I've got outside in the other studio there, which I don't have the details on me for that. But if you remind me, Sujata, I'll get that info for you. You need a proper studio easel when you're going up to that sort of size. Anyway, so I don't know what day, what times of the day I need to go into have the treatment, right? And it's nearly an hour's drive each way. So it's going to take out half of my day, basically, for about 6 weeks. And so because of that, it's difficult for me to sort of schedule what we're going to do. So the regular live streams will be put on hold during that time. So we've got another week and a half of live streams, right? So before I start treatment. So we'll try and do next week. We'll do live streams next week, and then the week after we'll have to play it by ear. Anyway, the point is that the regular live streams are going to be on hold for most of October. But I also want to do, as we've talked about, the Paint with the Impressionist program. So my thinking is I'm going to start pre-recording painting projects copying the Impressionists. I'm going to do some Australian Impressionists. I'm going to do obviously the French Impressionists. I'm I'm going to do some Russian Impressionists and maybe one or two of the Californian Impressionists. And we're going to have two versions of it, right? There's going to be the free version. Like in the past, we've run our challenges and workshops as like the Unleash the Artist Within. We'd made it free for everyone while it was on. And then if you wanted to, there was an opportunity to become a full member of the Learn to Paint Academy, which many of you took up that opportunity, and I appreciate that. So I'm just thinking about how to work around my schedule so that during October, I can still run the Paint with the Impressionists program, right? And because I don't want to leave it till November. You know, once we get into sort of like mid-November, people start thinking Christmas and, you know, end of year and all that sort of stuff. So I really want to do the Paint with the Impressionists program. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I'm going to start pre-recording the programs next week. And I'm going to have two versions. There's going to be the free version. So if you're not a member of the Learn to Paint Academy, you'll still be able to get access to part of it. And then there'll be the full-blown members version. And for a period of time during October, probably about 2 weeks, it will run as a live sort of event, as we've done in the past. It's just that the daily projects may not be live, if that makes sense. They're going to be pre-recorded, and I might need to schedule them. I'll try and do as many lives during that time as I can, but it may be that I have to pre-record it and it'll be scheduled, so you'll be watching it on a schedule, right? So that'll be the whole free sort of event, and then we'll close that down as we did with the Unleash the Artist Within. And then in the members area of the Learn to Paint Academy, we will have everything that was included in the free event, but a whole lot more. So I'm thinking we'll do maybe 3 or 4 painting projects in the free event, but I'm really thinking of doing probably about 12 or more copies of the Impressionists. And part of this is, you know, it's a selfish reason, I'll be honest. I've been wanting to have a go at doing some of the Impressionist paintings myself for some time, and I'm having trouble. So I've been going through all my favourite Impressionists, and I've been finding photos of their work, and I'm having trouble narrowing it down, basically. So I've got about 15 to 20 different photos that I think, yeah, I'd really like to have a go at this one. So over time, you know, between now and say the end of the year, I'm probably going to end up recording at least 12, maybe 15, maybe more. I won't commit to, you know, any number of painting projects of the different Impressionist styles. So the Australian Impressionist, the French Impressionist, the Russian Impressionists, and the UK Impressionists, right? So, so if you're a paid member, then you'll have access to the full-blown program. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking. So how does that sound? Does that sound like it's workable for you guys? I'm quite excited about the idea of having a go at their paintings. So I think it's always good to have a project to look forward to that excites you about painting, right? I haven't got my glasses on, I can't see a thing. Thank you to everyone who says they're sending their prayers. I mean, I'm sharing that with you, not because I'm necessarily looking for sympathy or anything like that. To me, it's not that big a deal. It's just an inconvenience, really. I think I'll be fine once I get past the other side of treatment. So I'm not sharing it with you because I want sympathy or anything like that. I'm just letting you know that there's going to be a disruption to our program, which just trying to figure out the best way around that. But I do appreciate everyone who says that they're thinking of me and their prayers. Manju says, exactly what I wanted to know. When I try and enlarge some of my smaller paintings, using acrylics for blocking will really help. Yeah, look, I use on those 2 bigger ones, I use the acrylics to block in, and I just did it really super fast without a lot of care. But it just helped me block in and get the painting started really quickly. Use a lot of paint, big brushes is the key. Thank you, Tracy, appreciate that. Thank you, Batya. Thank you, Sujata. Thank you, Tracy. Thanks, Beverly. Appreciate that. Cheers, Sujata. Thank you, Jano. Janet says, sounds awesome. Will give us something to work towards and keep focused. Yes, absolutely. Sherry says, question about the world of art, the newly released documentary about Bob Ross. Ooh, you're opening a can of worms there, Sherry. Has caused a storm of opinions on Facebook. I'm curious as to your opinion, especially since you learned from Bill Alexander method. If I were Bill, I would feel as if my heart was ripped out. Well, yeah, I mean, hard to know what Bill would think. He's long gone. Look, I watched the Bob Ross documentary, and I had heard, stories about the people who controlled the Bob Ross organisation from different sources prior to the film. Look, I think you've got to take everything with a grain of salt. There's always two sides to the story. I think it's a shame that the Kowalskis, I think their name is, didn't take up the option to give their side of the story in the film. But business sometimes gets murky, and you could argue both sides. I guess if it wasn't for the Kowalskis, maybe the Bob Ross name would have been lost to history. Who knows? It's certainly not an area that I have enough knowledge in. But yeah, I did study Bill Alexander, and look, the Bill Alexander organisation itself has, in my mind, is a little bit questionable as well. So I guess everything has the potential to run off the rails. Gail says, Rod, we can be available at any time. Looking forward to the impressions. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Janet. Oh, can't type. Sorry, Janet. Tracy, do you think it's difficult adjustment going to a larger canvas? Yeah, it's not difficult as such, but you have to put a little bit more thought into it. And, like everything, when you scale up, I always say composition, big shapes are the most important thing to get right. So just take maybe more time in getting the composition right, getting your big shapes right. Composition makes such a difference. If you have a look at this, I shared this on our Wednesday live stream, albeit it was a bit shaky, right? This is a painting I did about 9 years ago, of the Gibson Steps, right? And I want you to notice the compositional structure of this, and then have a look at this one here. Now, to me, the painting of this particular subject is that it's called the Great Ocean Road, right? Because it's such dramatic sort of cliff shapes and so on. Have a look where I've got my horizon line on my first go at this many years ago, right? I've got the horizon line down on about 25%. Now look where I've got the horizon line here. All right, so this is a compositional thing. This one feels like you're looking up at these grand cliffs, whereas this one doesn't quite have that grandeur to it, right? So composition, just little things can make such a massive difference. So we're going to keep studying the fundamentals of composition and so on. So yeah, when you scale up bigger than a 12 by 16, you're going to need to make sure you get those big shapes in the right spot and the composition right. Manju says, 12 to 15 impressionist painting sounds very exciting. Will keep us busy, and me, yes, until Christmas. The name of that Bob Ross documentary escapes me at the moment, but it's on Netflix, Robert. So if you just go to Netflix and type in Bob Ross, you'll find it there. Where are we up to? Pardon me. Pauline says, what are the top 3 things you learnt from your tutorials with Brian Cook? One of the big things, takeaways I got Pauline and everyone else from Brian was that he didn't, he just make up subjects out of his mind, right? So he wasn't constrained by a subject that was in front of him. He was just celebrating, that his love of landscape and seascapes. And so he wasn't stuck with having to really recreate a photo. So that was one thing that I really took away, was that he just had these endless paintings. He was never stuck for an idea. The other thing I noticed was that he did lots of variations on a theme. Like those 2 ones I just showed you there. He's probably done hundreds of different variations, move the tree across, just little variations on a theme. That was the other thing. And by doing that, you get really good at that particular type of subject. And then the third thing was his use of the palette knife, just the way he used the palette knife to create clouds. Never thought of that. And texture and so on. So just watching him use a palette knife was a big lesson. Teresa said, those paintings are beautiful. Thank you, Teresa. And thank you for that. Becky said, don't worry about us. You take care of yourself. Thank you, Becky. Pardon me. Rod, you have to put yourself first. Get well. And thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mary. Cheers, Pauline. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Gail. As I said, like the Impressionist thing is just something I've been wanting to do for a long time. But we'll run it as a live sort of workshop environment as well for people who maybe are new to the Learn to Paint Academy. So tell all your arty friends to join us when we get it rolling in about 3 weeks' time. Linda says best wishes. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. Rosalie's looking forward to the Impressionist paintings. Cool. Ivan Shishkin. Have to go and look him up. I don't really know his work. When is the next advanced live stream? Probably next Thursday, Barbara. We've got one more session to do on that creek bed. So probably put it in for next Thursday. Thank you, Gail. Hey, Leslie. Teresa said, I'm guilty of not painting for a bit. Working on my writing, I still join those talks because they keep me motivated. Terrific. Well, we all have breaks, don't we, from painting, that's for sure. Mike says, as long as they're recorded, we can paint along with you later. That's very true, Mike. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Gail says, sounds great. I'm really looking forward to it. Me too. Colin says, sounds wonderful. So does Jenny. Mike says, it will be great to tackle some of those with your direction. They look great or fun, but some I look at and wonder where to start. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like when we do the Impressionist, Paint with the Impressionist program, it's obviously all going to come through my approach. So I'm not going to try and figure out how they painted it. I'm just going to try and recreate versions of the Impressionist paintings using the Moore method of painting and the way I paint, right? Which isn't necessarily going to be the way Monet would have painted, but my goal is to try and get to a result that we're reasonably happy with, right? So yeah, we're not going to try and figure out how they paint it necessarily. We'll see. G'day, Cheryl. Pamela said, can never thank you enough for the time and inspiration you've given. Oh, thank you, Pamela. That's very kind. Julia says, I just started following and I just learned heaps in 5 minutes. Good on you, Julia. Great to have you here. All right. So, Sherry says, Bob Ross, happy accidents, betrayal and greed. That's it. Bummed me out to see it, but appreciate the rational take from... Yeah, I mean, it's very one-sided, Sherry, isn't it? I mean, it's Steve Ross and the other chap, basically it's all their version of what happened. No doubt there's another side to that story. And there were other instructors who were working with the organisation. You probably have a different version of the story as well. So Jenny said, Rod, how can I help my acrylic paints from drying out in the palette? It was a warm day yesterday and they seemed to dry out so quickly before I had a chance to use them. Jenny, there is no real way of doing it. Acrylics dry fast, right? So you keep them hydrated, as you've said you did, but they're going to dry fast. So you've got to paint fast with acrylics, I find. I've never figured out a way to paint slowly and carefully with acrylics in the Queensland environment here for most of the year. But there is a brand of acrylic paint. So I use Atelier Interactive because even if they've dried, you can rehydrate them and turn them back into a liquid form. So acrylic, Atelier Interactive are good for that purpose, which is why I use them. But there is another brand called Golden Open Paint, I think they're called. I haven't tried them, but I'm going to order some and try them. And they're acrylic paints that stay wet for longer. So they're done at the same drying time. And maybe that's what you need to try if you find that frustrating. The one thing I've seen in pretty much every workshop I've done, you know, people come in here or I go elsewhere to do workshops, people turn up with, and this is not a criticism, right? It's an observation that I've been able to see repeated over and over and over, is that my students come to the workshops with acrylic paint and they put out a little 5 cent piece amount of paint, and it dries really quickly, right? When I blocked in those 2 large paintings, well, let me show you. I'll show you how much paint I used for those 2 larger ones to give you a sense. Hang on for 1 second. Now, I was only blocking in, so I didn't use the Artilia Interactive for these, but these are the palettes that I used, right? And you can see that this was the black area that I mixed up here, and there's still a fair bit of dry paint there. So I used a lot of paint. They were big canvases, obviously. So that's one palette. I had 2 palettes on the go. This is my lighter colours, and that's the blue there. You can see there's still a big amount of blue there. But I used a lot of paint. And I think that's the key with acrylics, I've found, right? But perhaps try the golden open paint, and that may help you keep the paint wet for longer. Tracy says, first live stream, been following for over a year. Thank you, Tracy. I have to ask, what is the best kind of brush you use for blending? I see you blend and it looks seamless. I've tried so many ways and so many brushes. I always want to ask. Mine all seem to have lines. Well, mine have lines as well. I like a really painterly effect. I like to see the brush marks in there. So, one of the biggest problems with blending paint, again, I've seen this repeated time and time again with my students, is they don't have enough paint. They're not using enough paint. So it's really difficult to blend a very thin amount of paint that you put up on the canvas that starts soaking into the fibre of the canvas. It's almost impossible to blend if you don't use enough paint up on the painting surface in the first place, right? So the real key to blending is not so much the brush, because you can blend with pretty much anything. It's the amount of paint that you use. And if you're using acrylics, the acrylics start drying from the minute you put them out on the palette. So try using more paint for a start. But I use a flat brush, a flat synthetic brush. All right? This is my preferred brush. These are rosemary. This synthetic hair, which is just a little bit softer than hog hair, natural hairs. So this is synthetic, but I'm using these. And I think it's just a delicate, having a soft touch, just getting a feel for it. I think that's important. But really, I think the real key to blending is how much paint you've got available. Now, I did buy, in the interest of full disclosure, right, I did buy a particular brush to try. I'll go and find that, because I don't want you to think that I don't try other things. Okay? Because I experiment all the time. Usually, most experiments, I usually end up going back to what I was doing in the first place. But this one here, this is a rosemary one as well, from the Eclipse Long Flat family. But this one is synthetic hair, but it's meant to be like a badger type hair, which is a softer hair, right? Now this is a bit gummed up with paint. So I did buy this to try it out for blending, like in clouds in particular. Just trying to get some soft effects in the clouds. And it works probably, there's a marginal improvement over using just the synthetic hairs. Marginal, right? But I may go and buy another couple of these with slightly bigger, because you can see it's a small one, slightly bigger. So I may buy a couple more. But really, most of the blending I do is with my flat brushes, and I think the real key to it is having enough paint there to actually blend. So I hope that helps. Where are we up to here? Pauline says, have you decided which impressionist you are doing first? Not at this stage, Pauline. I've got about, as I said, narrowed it down to about 20 photos so far. So I'm just gathering information at the moment, and I will keep you posted. on what some of the selections are. There is one particular, somebody keeps asking me for a snow scene, right? Now, I've never actually been to the snow. I've seen it fall out of the sky once in my life, right? So it's a little bit difficult for me to come up with a snow scene painting. But there is a Monet painting I've always loved, which is the magpie sitting on the fence in the snow. So that one's probably going to be in the mix, I'd say. Rosalie said, I did a few Monet paintings when I first started painting. Will be awesome to revisit. Yeah, terrific. It'd be good to compare. G'day, Wendy. Finally get to have a morning coffee chat with you. Finally put brush to canvas this week. Good on you, Wendy. Gary says, out of left field, Rod, beaches, headlands, fields and vegetated mountains aren't always available to some of us to paint. I'm wondering if you are considered or have done it already, you would look at capturing what can be inspirational in local. Yeah, to be honest, Gary, I haven't really done urban sort of, but I want to. So it's definitely part of the plan. It's just that, look, I had planned to go back to France last May, and my plan was to get a whole lot of, street scene type photos and use that for that very purpose. Because to be honest, the street scenes around here are, they're just not that great. So I might see if I can dig out some of my old photos from Whitby and places like that. And yeah, maybe we'll introduce that into the live streams. The biggest challenge with doing it on live stream, type of environment is once you get into buildings, architecture, that then introduces the challenge of perspective, which we haven't really covered a lot. And it starts just becoming a complex scene to do in a live stream environment. That's why I've sort of shied away from it. So it's a lack of good material for me, and just the complexity of conveying it on a live stream. But I'll definitely give it consideration. I'll see if I can find some of my street scenes from Whitby and so on. Good on you, Christine. Good to see you. Gail says she loves golden open paints. There you go, there's a recommendation. Jeanette says to keep acrylics hydrated between uses, spray with water and cover with cling wrap so no air comes in, and perhaps put it in the fridge. Very good. Thank you, Jeanette. Morning, Carleen. Leslie says she uses a stay wet palette and the paint stays good for weeks. Yeah, I think that probably works well down in Geelong. Once you get up here, it's a little bit more challenging with acrylics, I found. Teresa said, I've increased how much paint I use in acrylics and use a retarder for the sky. Yeah, definitely need a retarder to get your skies and clouds right, definitely. It's really helped me by increasing my paint volume. Good on you, Teresa. Hey, Serena. Thanks, Rosie. Susan says, I enjoy the WSO's ability to make blended colours to use for a couple of days. Yeah, I mean, that's why, like if you're an acrylic painter, I recommend to all acrylic painters, at least give water soluble oils or water mixable oils a go, because you get all the advantages of acrylic, but you get extended open time to be able to keep working into them, right? Those two big paintings I just showed you earlier, they're both still wet enough for me to be able to work back into them quite easily. So you should do yourself a favour and at least have a go. And you probably need to do about 10 paintings with water mixable oils to get a feel for it, I found. You need to come to North Dakota. We have lots of snow. I don't know that I'll be travelling anywhere anytime soon, Kathy, but thank you. And I'm not that keen to see snow. I like the warmer weather. Wendy says, I'm using canvas pads at the moment to be mindful of my transient homeless state and therefore lack of space. Any tips for how to use it and keep it taut? If you're using canvas pads, then I usually use tape, like a watercolour painter, and tape down the surface. If you like to paint to the very edge, you could use bulldog clips and then just move them and fill in the bits that are covered. Rosalie said, very excited to share some news. In our recent lockdown, I was asked to share some of my paintings in our community Facebook site. I did only local sites and the group guessed where they were. Ended up doing enough to fit into a book of 40 pages. Got sales and commissions. Fantastic, Rosalie. Well done. That's a great idea. Well done. And it says, I've been trying to get to the French Impressionists in Melbourne, but due to COVID. Yes, I was coming down for that a few months ago, but not now. Serena says, where can I share photos for you all to paint? Photos I take on road trips. Well, you could, don't know, I'll have to have a think about that, Serena. Let me get back to you on that. Would you consider occasionally choosing any photos Academy members submit? Possibly, Paul. I mean, my biggest concern with doing that is copyright issues down the track. So I've sort of been reluctant really to just not knowing the source and so on. But yeah, possibly. What is a retarder? A retarder is a medium that you mix with the paint. And a retarder is particularly used for acrylic paint to slow it down, slow down the drying time so it stays wet for longer, which means you can blend and do things like that with your acrylic paint. So it's just a medium that alters the nature of the paint. Yeah, WMOs are more expensive. If you want big tubes, I use the Winsor & Newton Artisan paints. And it says, love working with WMO, but get it everywhere. Never seem to have the problem with acrylics. I'm not sure I can help you with that. Just got to be mindful of where you've got wet paint. Okay. Not sure what you're referring to, Mike. You say they look like abstract paintings. Do you mean the two big ones I held up earlier? I definitely plan on selling the two big ones. Colin said, collecting Impressionist examples already in anticipation of this interesting challenge. Terrific, Colin. Thank you. Appreciate that, Colin. Thank you, Julia. Can I say which brand of paper? I don't use paper very much. Occasionally I'll use like a mixed media paper, and I haven't got one handy here because I've been tidying up the studio, so I don't know what the brand is. But I generally don't paint on paper. I paint on canvas or boards. You don't want to pay for boards. You can actually prepare your own boards a lot cheaper than buying paper. So if you go to the art studio chats in the members area and look for the one where I tell you how to prepare your own MDF boards, it works out a lot cheaper than buying anything, really. Gail said she watched me paint this one. The white canvas looks like white water. Well, yeah, I mean, it is pretty much white water in there. It's a little bit grey and green. We'll get to that. We'll probably finish that up next week. No, I haven't. I left that area, deliberately left that area not painted because I don't know why. I think I was getting slack. I put my paintings in photos under my account and they automatically fit into activity. Oh, very good, Mark. Thank you. Colin said, Rod, do Royal Talon's Cobra produce 150ml tubes? Trying to source them. So Royal Talon's Cobra are my preferred brand of water mixable oils, except for the fact that, yes, they do produce larger tubes of paint, but availability of them has been pretty low during the COVID period. So they're only the small ones are available. And that frustrates me because I go through a small tube of some colours very quickly. So that's why I've gone back to Artisan. As soon as the supply of the larger tubes improves, I'll go back to the Cobra. So yes, they do. Not every colour, but most of the colours that you need, they do in bigger tubes. They just don't seem to have them available at the moment, which is a bit of a bummer. How long for WMO to dry to ship across the country? 3 weeks and it still feels tacky. Should be dried within 3 weeks, finger touch. White always takes the longest to dry. But I'd normally, within 10 to 14 days, I'd be shipping a painting with WMO. As long as it's got it gets a film or a dry sort of crust over the top, then you should be fine. But if you're using a lot of white, then the white will take longer to dry. So try and minimise the amount of white that you use. Pauline said, which is your favourite of the 4 Brian Cook paintings you've done on white? That Seascape Headland one that I held up before was my favourite of them, just because I love the beach and I love the way he sort of portrayed those rocky shelves, and it reminded me of when I was a kid. So that's probably my favourite of the 4. Where are we up to? Gail said, I ordered the Golden Open white by mistake instead of the heavy body. When I mix it with the heavy body blue for skies or water, it does extend the drying time even though it's mixed. Well, there you go. Maybe you only need the white then, although, you're not just using white. Manju says, whenever I start a painting, I always remember your phrase, paint like a millionaire. So I put out a lot of paint on my palette and I've never had a problem blending or paint drying on the palette. There you go, Manju. I heard that from another artist, put out paint like you're a millionaire. And it's definitely held me in good stead. And I see people in our workshops, who they don't put out anywhere near enough paint and they struggle with it. And then they use tiny little brushes and they've got a canvas this big. It's always fun. Snow Scene from Monet will be wonderful. Yes, I think so too, hopefully. Margaret says, I have retarded to a water in a spray bottle. There's a good approach. Tracy said, are Winsor and Newton Galleria paints good? I don't know. I've not used Galleria, so I couldn't say. In fact, I haven't even heard of them. So I don't know, Tracy, sorry. Sherry said, did I miss the big announcement you mentioned a couple of weeks back? No, you haven't missed it, Sherry. I haven't got to the point of announcing it yet. I'm having, we're working on it behind the scenes, and there's a fair bit of technical complexity to it, which we're still working through. And I'm waiting for somebody else to get back to me before I can progress it. Hopefully in the next week, we'll get to the point where we're ready to announce it. It's pretty exciting. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions that you may have burning away in the back of your mind there, desperately wanting to come out? Bum, ba-dum, bum. Any more questions? It seems like the live stream's working better today, which is good. How's my book coming along? Haven't had a chance to really do much more with it, Gail. I've started writing out like a table of contents on what to include. But yeah, had a lot going on the last few weeks with life. Serena says, how to paint like you? Well, Serena, it's a journey. There's no easy answer to it, and I think it's falling in love with the process. That's the real key. I mean, if you study everything at the Learn to Paint Academy, become a full member, and study everything there, then you will naturally gravitate down my sort of approach and my style. But the real answer is to fall in love with the process, because it's not an overnight thing. I'm into my 11th year. It'll be 11 years in November. And so the real answer is to fall in love with the process. I appreciate that, Serena. Everyone, I think it's hard to replicate somebody else's style. If you study under somebody, um, if you study under somebody, then you will take on aspects of their style without a doubt. Um, you go, Julia. Sorry, we do have a. It is a paid membership. Yeah, absolutely. You can become a monthly member, um, and it's less than $1 a day, and you get access to everything. Jenny says, "Can't wait for the special announcement. Dun, 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 dun. It's going to be exciting." Well, I think it's exciting. You may not, but Colin said tertiary and complementary colours. They're almost the same. No, they're not the same. They are different. If you have a look at the colour wheel, okay, so your primary colours are yellow, red and blue, okay. Secondary colours are mixing the two primaries, so yellow and blue makes green, okay. So primary colours, secondary colour is the combination of the two primary colours. The tertiary colour is when you move the green in the direction of one of the primary colours. So a yellow-green is a tertiary colour, okay? Or a blue-green is a tertiary colour. They sit between a secondary and a primary colour, okay? That's a tertiary colour. A complementary colour is where you've got your primary colour, it's opposite on the colour wheel, okay? In this case being violet or purple. The opposite, so the complementary complementary colour is usually, well not usually, it always is, the other two primaries combined. Okay, so that's what a complementary colour. So violet becomes the complement of yellow. It's the opposite on the colour wheel. So it's not the same as a tertiary colour, no. Very different. Tertiary colours is where, look, you look at most great landscape painting, and most of it is really good landscape artists use a lot of greys, and they really get down into the tertiary type colours a lot more than what we realise. There's very few landscape painters who are using the primaries, yellow, red and blue, in pure colour, right? It's usually somewhere in the in-betweens that you find most good landscape, seascape painting, probably most painting. And greys, right? Greys are really the key to effective looking landscape painting, is knowing how to use greys and then popping more saturated or more vivid colour like your primary colours, right? So what I've tried to do with those two bigger ones is I put my figures where I want to draw attention with a primary colour, use red or blue predominantly. So yeah, well, I don't know where I'm going with this. The French Impressionists in particular, they use a lot of complementary colours, and we'll explore that. And we've talked about that in the Masters analysis as well. Like the Soraya, who used the yellow-purple combination to a great effect. So yeah, Mike said, I should be patient at the 3-month painting mark. Oh, hell yeah. At 3 months, you know nothing really. You know, like you just have fun. But keep studying. You've got to study the fundamentals, and you've got to paint a lot, right? So 3 months is not... Get back to me in 3 years, right? So that's the... If you want to get good at painting, it's a journey. It takes years. You know, if you think back to how the great artists of history used to learn to paint, they'd go and study for 4 years in an atelier under a master artist, and it would be 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 4 years, right? So yeah, it's going to take more than 3 months. Unless, I mean, some people might get good in 3 months, but geez, there are not that many of them around. So you just got to love it, and that's what will carry you through. G'day, Georgia in the UK. Good to have you here. Good on you, Mike. Well, you can tackle anything, but yeah, patience is important, and most of us want to improve faster than what we physically can, which is always a challenge. Pauline said there is so much to learn from these live chats. Good on you, Pauline. I'm glad you feel that. Where are we up to? When are the Impressionist painting challenges happening, please? In a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. It really depends, Sandy, on, as I was explaining earlier, depends on how my schedule unfolds, which is out of my hands at the moment. Stream's perfect, fantastic. Tracy said, thanks for all the help and advice. Enjoy your weekend. You too. Happy painting. Sherry said, I'm still struggling with temperature, especially when I am trying to distinguish warm and cool within the same family, such as the blues and reds. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's pretty obvious that when you look at the colour wheel, that this side of the colour wheel is the warmer side, right? Yellows to reds. In here, this is the warm side of the colour wheel, right? This is the cool side, the blues and greens. So the question is, like, if I'm looking at blues, which is going to be the warmer or the cooler? Well, if you've got a blue and you add red to it, then it's pulling it. Well, yeah, I mean, what you got to do is look at the colour and its orientation, right? In which direction is it oriented? And that should give you a clue. Like, ultramarine blue is, to me, a warm blue because it's got a red orientation to it. Whereas cerulean blue, to me, seems cooler. Now, some people will argue that cerulean's warmer because it's got a yellow, it's leaning towards the yellow, but to me, it's more leaning towards the green. So it's difficult to actually work it out. But it's pretty clear that if you have like a lemon yellow versus a yellow ochre, which has got red in it, that the yellow ochre is going to be warmer than the lemon yellow. To me, ultramarine blue is warmer than a cerulean blue. And a cadmium red is going to be warmer than an alizarin crimson, which is a cool blue, cool red. So beyond that, I wouldn't try and figure it out too much. I just have a warm and a cool of each of the primaries. Robert said, that statement you just made could help so many people and save a lot of people from packing in their painting. Well, yeah, absolutely. This is, I guess, the real message I've been trying to get across for people for a long time is that paintings, very few people have natural talent for painting or guitar playing or cooking great food, like, or anything. Very few of us out of the box have natural talent, right? So we need to study and practice. It's the same with anything, any endeavour we have in life. And if you've seen my talk about the 4 stages of learning anything, the first 2 stages are stages of frustration. And you just have to know that you're going to be frustrated at times. Things aren't going to work out the way you want. And just keep studying and practicing and moving forward. And you can develop the technical skills of good painting. Anybody, as long as you can pick up a brush and wave it round and you've got reasonably good vision, right? Pretty much anybody can develop good technical skills as long as they don't give up in the moments of frustration and despair, and they see it as a long-term process, and it's a journey that we have to travel on, and it's unique for all of us. And in that journey, we're going to have periods where we're going to really hate everything we do, and we're going to have periods where we like what we're doing. We just keep moving forward, right? With study, practice, and if you add community in there. So pretty much anybody can get really good technically. Beyond that, to become a great artist, which then involves an intangible, in my mind, more of a spiritual, creative element, that's a completely different ballgame. But anybody could get good technically to become a professional artist with the right mindset and the right attitude and the right understanding of the learning process. Susan said, I love the creating something colourful from a white canvas, not dancing these days, so now my paintbrush is dancing. Fantastic, Susan. Yes, it's great to see a painting come to life from nothing. All right, last chance to ask me questions. Pardon me. Well, we're going to start wrapping up. G'day, Robin in Adelaide. Do you ever have creative block? And if so, how do you deal with it? All the time, Robin, I have creative blocks. And so what I try and do is, see, when we create, we're outputting energy and creativity. And sometimes that flow of energy and that output gets stopped, right? For whatever reason. Usually it's our mind and our thinking and what's going on in our world. So creating is an outflow of energy. If you don't have energy flowing in, creative energy flowing in, then it's very easy to dry up and have that creative outflow stop. So what I always do is I'm constantly trying to input information as well. I go out, like as a landscape painter, I think it's a great idea to get out in the landscape as much as you possibly can and take photos and do sketches and just immerse yourself in the landscape, right? I love the beach as well, so I go to the beach as often as I can, take photos, and so I think you've got to immerse yourself in your subject and input information as well. But also from other artists, like I constantly look at other artists online, on Instagram and so on. I constantly watch other artists' training videos and courses, okay? Something I've been doing consistently for 10 years or more. I go to as many galleries and exhibitions as I possibly can, although it's been limited in recent times with COVID. But, I was planning on going down to Melbourne because there were 2 major exhibitions on there that I was going to fly down for a week or 2 and go to those. So constantly inputting into my brain. I've got a big collection of art books that I'm investing in and referring to. So you've got to input as much as you output. And so if you find you have a creative block, you've got to look at what's going on in your life. Like, sometimes we're faced with monumental challenges in our life and emotional things, and that will stop your creative flow. So you've got to look at what's happening in your life. But really, I think the real thing for most of us is just not inputting enough in. And the more you input in, the more it'll flow out. And look, there are times where sometimes the easiest solution to having a creative block is to get a blank canvas and paint and just start throwing paint at it, right? Sometimes just getting started is the hardest part. We've talked in the past about Stephen Pressfield's books on resistance. So you might look at those if you're finding resistance to actually starting. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is our brain waves operate on different frequencies. And I find that if my brain is right in what we call beta, which is our everyday awake state where we're sort of consciously aware of everything going on around us and we're in this heightened state of a brain activity, I can't paint in that state. So I need to mellow right out. And so one of the things that I do is I put on music to distract my conscious mind, or a podcast, things like that I find help a lot as well. All right, so hopefully out of that collection of info, you'll find something that might help you there, Robin. Colin said, can I ask where Winsor & Newton 150 tubes are presently available? Try Eckersley's online. Eckersley's and also Jackson's UK is where I am sourcing my paints from, Colin, so you might find them there. Serena says, it sounds so cool to tell somebody that I'm studying painting under Rod Moore. Started painting last year under lockdown. I love it. Oh, good on you, Serena. Thank you for that. Pauline said, since joining the academy, I look at scenery in a whole new light. Yeah, painting does that to you. It completely changes the way you see the world. Chrissy said, my creative juices have dried up at the moment. Our lockdown ends tonight, so I can now venture to the beach and bush and take photos. Yeah, good on you, Chrissy. Artshed Online is good for suppliers, indeed. Good group of guys, Tom there. down at Artshed Online. However, I'm not sure if they have Winsor & Newton Artisan, which is what Colin was asking about, so not sure about that. But they may have. Janet says, I am at the frustrated state, doesn't seem anything I paint is right. If that's the case, Janet, keep studying the fundamentals, right? Do the little studies. Like, I always get back to, if your painting's not working and you can't produce anything that you're happy with, I always go back to the little study of the cube, the little box, a value study. And to me, if you struggle to represent a cube with values and make it have a three-dimensional feel to it, then that's a fundamental, it's an issue with your fundamentals, right? It's your observation, it's your ability to be able to draw accurate lines and understand values, right? So if you can get better at those few things, then your painting of landscapes or whatever will improve naturally. It always comes back to the composition, to the fundamentals. Composition, big shapes, the design, your ability to be able to see and then recreate what you see, and values, right? Forget colour, because colour just is another layer of complexity. Most people's painting problems are fixed with composition, design, and values, right? So if you're not happy with what you're producing right now, and I get to see everyone's paintings at the Learn to Paint Academy, and I've seen thousands of them over 10 years, and workshops that I do, and I'd say nearly everybody's number one problem is not getting the big shapes in the right shape in the right place on the canvas, including myself, right? I'm not saying I'm an expert at this at all, right? I was looking at this painting we did on the live stream, and I couldn't see it while I was doing the live stream because there's a lot going on, but the next day I realised that the shape of this, whilst it's good, it's in the wrong spot. Now, I don't know if you can see it. Maybe the photo's a bit small to be able to see, but I've actually got this in the wrong spot, right? Now, I'm being particularly fussy because obviously as you get better, you become more particular, but I've got it too close. It's too close. It should sit further back into the painting, right? So that's a compositional. I've got the shape right, but I've got the shape in the wrong spot and the wrong size, right? So it's a fundamentals issue, right? And pretty much everybody who I see, their painting could be improved with getting better composition and getting and more accuracy with your shapes. And often one of the big problems is the orientation of your painting surface versus the orientation of the photo you're working off. That's a big problem, right? So getting your mind around that, and also simplification. Like, go back to that More Method of Painting course, which was one of our challenges originally, in the Learn to Paint Academy, and go back through that and understand why it's important to simplify before you add things, right? If you don't know how to do a painting with 3 colours, blue, red and yellow, adding another 15 colours to your palette is not going to help, right? It's not going to help. Alan says, Jackson's UK, 1/3 of Exley price. Yes, absolutely. They're fantastic. And they have a warehouse in Australia, which is great. So that's why it's 2 weeks delivery, yeah. How do you go about relocating the shape? You mean on this one here, if I'm not happy? I'd make it slightly smaller and I'd push it further back. And by pushing it further back, it's really the anchor point. See where it is there? But in the photo, it's sitting up about there. So it wouldn't take much for me to, just to make it a little bit smaller and raise up that line. I'm not going to, because here's the thing. I'm being particularly fussy with myself, right? When I finish this painting and I put it in an online gallery available for sale, nobody's going to be looking at the photo and comparing it. So nobody's going to know. It's just me that knows, right? And if I hadn't pointed it out to you, you might not have known either. But it wouldn't be that difficult to cut in this one and cut in with the shape. I just use the sky to reshape it and then just raise it up to almost to the horizon line, so it sits further back. So it's not that difficult to do. But if you want to revisit the whole idea of big shapes, then go back to the More Method of Painting course in the Learn to Paint Academy. because I go into great detail there about photos and cropping them and identifying the big shapes. And really that's because you think about it, like if you're going to fly from Melbourne to Paris and you're 1 degree off when you start, you're not going to land in Paris, right? And it's the same with painting. If your big shapes aren't right at the start and the composition is not right, nothing you do towards the end is going to fix it. And there'll always be that problem within the painting. And I find that a lot of us want to add more and more details at the end, thinking that that's how we're going to resolve the issue of a painting. But really the issue starts at the start. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate that. Gail likes it better where it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to move it. I'm just pointing it out that it's just not accurate against the photo. But again, nobody will know when I finish it. So I'm not going to move it. I'm just pointing out that even after I've been painting for 11 years, I still don't get my shapes as good as they could be, right? So my observation skills need to keep improving and I need to keep working on it. Thank you, Mary. Glad you've enjoyed it. Where are we up to? Thank you, Robin. Jenny says resistance is fear, which I get and stop until I see something that inspires me. If you have issues around resistance, like you just can't get yourself to sit down and start painting, then I highly recommend the Stephen Pressfield books, The War of Art and Turning Pro. Those 2 books changed my life and are largely responsible for me becoming a professional artist, right? So highly recommend those. We've talked about those in previous lives and so on. Cheers, Mike. Appreciate that. G'day, Anne. How are you? Anne's somebody who is a great example of, really studies everything she can. I hope you don't mind me saying, Anne, but I've met Anne at a number of different workshops over the last 5 years around southeast Queensland. So Anne is studying all she can, and she paints a lot, and in recent times has got great results with her painting and making them available for sale, and Anne's a great model of consistency. So appreciate you joining us here today, Anne. And I'm glad you enjoy our coffee chats. Thanks, Gail. Thank you, Colin. Appreciate that. Cheers, Georgia. You've been binge watching your YouTube videos for a while. Oh, thanks, Georgia. I haven't put any YouTube videos up for some time, and we've really developed the Learn to Paint Academy significantly in the last couple of years. So, yeah, come and join us in the Learn to Paint Academy. Gail said, I bought those books after you talked about them. Now I will read them. Yes, it's a good idea to read them. I'm a bit like you. I've got lots of books that I haven't read yet, but I will one day. My pleasure, Anne. Where are we? Cheers, Carlene. Becky said, thanks so much, Rod, for all the great info. I've got a committee meeting to plan my first show in October. Fantastic. I have about 120 pieces that are sellable so far. Wow, good for you. Put them out there. Somebody will love them. Thanks, Serena. All right, friends, we're going to wrap it up. Hope you've enjoyed today. Happy painting over the weekend.